In the Italian capital, a French team has just discovered an exceptional edifice that they've been searching for centuries. I'm going to join them in the center of ancient Rome. This is certainly the richest and most studied archaeological perimeter in Italy. You might think that nothing more could be discovered here. All of the emperor's architectural wonders seem to have been fully investigated. And yet, just beneath the Roman Forum and the terraces of Palatine Hill, archaeologists from the French school in Rome have uncovered quite a surprise.
That makes 15. 15 in all.
Because they've indeed discovered a new architectural wonder dating from the reign of Emperor Nero. It's an astonishing dining room that rotates on itself. When the archaeologists first began their investigation on Palatine Hill, they had only a single piece of evidence, an ancient text of the time. In his writings, The 12 Caesars, Suetonius tells us of a round dining room that rotated on itself, day and night, imitating the movement of the stars. For many years, the long-lost dining room has been the El Dorado of archaeologists. This text was the starting point for their entire investigation. It indicates that the rotating dining room was part of Nero's immense residence, the Domus Aurea, the Golden House. Thanks to both literary sources and the work of archaeologists, scientists have been able to create a virtual model of this massive residence built in the 1st century. It was a city in a city. The author Suetonius wrote that it spread out over 3/4 of a square mile. It was surrounded by artificial lakes and composed of tens of buildings, but there was no indication of where the dining room might be. Though it was well known that Nero had a 98-foot colossus erected in its center bearing his own effigy. Texts recount that in the year 68, Nero committed suicide after having been sentenced to death for the crime of parricide. His great residence was thus dismembered and buried. Today, all that remains are a few vestiges of the Golden House, and until recently, no one had found any trace of the famous rotating dining room. Françoise Villedieu is one of the archaeologists who has been searching for it for years, until finally in 2009, when her team uncovered this strange structure. So Françoise, this moment is extraordinary in every sense of the term.
Absolutely.
It's true, this confusing architecture that's so impressive in scale. How do you describe it?
So the part that we see here measured more than 65 feet high. It was freestanding and looked like a tower. Then it was buried with earth, brought in to create an artificial terrace.
Okay.
We partially cleared it by removing enormous amounts of earth. Now we can go down and I'll show you.
Okay, let's go. It took François' team 6 months to uncover the structure. Seen like this, it's a real labyrinth. Then they discovered the singularity of the building.
So just watch out for the bar as you go down. So the central pillar measures some 13 feet in diameter. It's one of the first elements that we found, and it amazed us right from the start.
Very unique. Do any other examples of this sort of structure exist?
No. This is an unusual and even unique structure. From this pillar stem the semicircular arches that connect it to the annular wall. So there are 8 arches, and more than 19 feet below the upper level, we find the same arrangement again, 8 arches that connect the 2 elements.
This construction is extremely strong.
Exactly.
I imagine it's to support another impressive structure.
Exactly.
Another element will make them understand that their discovery is not a living chamber, but part of the substructure.
The surfaces were left raw. We see bricks, although normally in any living space, the facings were usually covered with a coated surfacing.
At this stage of the investigation, Françoise Villedieu has identified a powerful structure, and above all, it's circular. She begins to understand that this discovery is possibly something archaeologists have been searching for centuries, the substructure of the rotating dining room. To confirm her hypothesis, she'll begin trying to date the structure. The entrance to the stairs is here.
Here, inside the pillar.
In the interior of the main pillar, Françoise found a first clue to help her determine a date. The masonry is intact.
Yes. So we found this door, which leads to a staircase that descended almost 50 feet below.
Is this type of construction a chronological indicator?
Well, among the clues we have is this stamp imprinted on a brick. This stamp bears the name of a manufacturer, known to have worked approximately between the years 24 to 75 in the 1st century.
Some of that during Nero's reign.
Absolutely. And there are 3 examples of this stamp on the stairs.
Françoise has now determined a range for the date. To confirm this, she will compare the structure with another edifice from Nero's time, discovered not far from here, buried many feet beneath the surface. It is one of the most important buildings that made up Nero's residence, the Golden House. It was rediscovered in the 16th century, and this excavation site is still yielding discoveries today. Beneath the frescoes, which allow me to imagine the level of Nero's luxurious lifestyle, the masonry is an indicator. By studying this masonry, Marta Fedeli helped François' investigation to make leaps forward.
Wow.
Wow. The light here is incredible. What a unique room.
Yes, it's called the octagonal room because of its octagonal architectural plan. And at the top is this spectacular open dome. Come here. I'll show you a detail that helped us to understand. Look, the masonry is extremely regular. The size of the bricks, the thickness of the joints, is very representative of the period of Nero's reign, and it's similar to what we found on Palatine Hill. Furthermore, we have this very recognizable mark on the joints. Look at this line here, that we also found on the structure uncovered by Françoise. These elements make the 2 structures very similar, so we can imagine that the structure found on the Palatine is also from the period of Nero's reign.
Okay, that's quite logical. But I imagine that this room was where the emperor entertained his guests. So the walls would have been covered. This would not have been exposed.
Yes, you've brought up an important point, because here we are actually in a presentation room that was entirely covered in marble. The decor was very rich. Today we no longer can see it because the decorations have been removed. And we can only see the masonry now. The difference with the structure that we found on the Palatine is that that structure was never covered or decorated. It was just masonry. We believe that it was a technical room, and therefore it didn't need to be decorated.
That's very logical. By superimposing the masonry of the two buildings, the bricks and the joints seem to be the same size, and we find the same characteristic line. This mark belonging to the builder confirms that the structure is from Nero's reign. But how can we know that this is indeed the famous rotating dining room? At the structure's summit, the vestiges held in place will allow Françoise to move forward with her hypothesis.
So you have one on the left and another one even closer.
These identical cavities arranged symmetrically become fundamental clues.
There's one between the two that was very damaged during the destruction of the building. And there are others over there, and also this smaller central cavity.
But what was the purpose of this enigmatic system?
Probably a system using something like ball bearings.
Which could potentially move, could turn the entire plateau.
Yes. Imagine, in the cavities, spheres that were connected by small bars that anchored them into the floor.
Françoise has succeeded in proving her hypothesis by making comparisons to artifacts discovered in older digs. I will travel to Nemi, 15 miles from Rome. In this village, another ball-bearing rotating system was discovered during a dig that everyone here remembers. It's a story that fascinates me, and which blends archaeology and politics. In the 1st century AD, there in Lake Nemi, were two enormous ships built by Nero's uncle Caligula. Soon they would sink to the bottom of the lake. They would stay there for centuries. Over the years, fishermen and other locals would bring objects from the ships back up to the surface. Several expeditions tried unsuccessfully to extract the ships from the lake, until the day that a man decided to employ every means necessary to get the ships out. In 1929, Benito Mussolini, another megalomaniac despot, wanted to show that he was the legitimate heir to Rome's greatest emperors. He decided to completely dry up the lake in order to get the ships out. The fabulously expensive enterprise was a success. The two ships were exhibited in a museum along with the objects found inside, including a strange rotating system. But in 1944, the Germans bombed the museum, destroying the antique treasures. Today in the museum, the two ships are reproductions, but the famous rotating system miraculously survived the bombing. Mathieu Gabet studied it. He's an engineer, and he works with Françoise.
I'll be taking you through this area in just a moment. But right now, here you have items that were found at the bottom of Lake Nemi that are very interesting.
Yes, and the spheres have a strange resemblance to the marks back at the site.
Exactly. They were found at the bottom of Lake Nemi, these bronze spheres with small fins fixed onto them. This element was actually embedded into a wooden platform that turned. We don't fully understand the function of this platform. One hypothesis is that it supported a statue that could turn during ceremonies. And another hypothesis is that it helped in unloading and loading ships. But you can really imagine that larger spheres could be housed in hemispherical cavities such as these, which largely resemble the ones we found.
You can see how they fit within these orifices.
Absolutely. So here's the reconstitution of the turning plate which we saw with the spheres. So these balls will allow rotation. You have to imagine a floor that it would be anchored to, that would turn.
And the dining room worked the same, only larger?
Exactly. There were several rows of balls because it was 20 times bigger.
Right. There were several concentric circles, allowing the room to turn in a regular and smooth manner. This ball-bearing rolling system is an essential piece in this archaeological puzzle. One more argument that helps explain the mystery of the rotating dining room. But the investigation is not over, because rotation requires energy. What source of energy moved this immense dining room in a circular motion? On Palatine Hill, the French school's new project of digs is helping to answer that question. Here again, collaborations between archaeologists and engineers like Mathieu show their great utility. Using new recently discovered elements, he was able to formulate his hypothesis.
We have some metallic pieces. Most were torn off, recovered. And this element that we see here in iron, buried in the masonry, was probably a support mechanism.
So here we have traces of different metal elements, and this indicates the general system.
Absolutely. It was a metal or wood chassis housed inside this technical structure, found within the circular wall.
So we see a sort of ghost imprint from the machine, which needed energy. But what type of energy moved it?
Suetonius reports that Nero's dining room turned endlessly, imitating the movement of the world. The constant nature of the energy that would have driven this movement excludes the use of animal power or wind energy, clearly not constant. What he did was extend the aqueduct built by his great-uncle Claudius to directly supply the Palatine with energy.
Do you have an idea of the water flow needed to turn a machine like this?
The amount of water supplied by the aqueduct is roughly known. Literary sources recount a rate of 400 liters per second brought to the Palatine. And a simulation allows us to say that this amount of water is sufficient to power a water wheel.
Which by itself could have rotated the mechanism and the floor of the dining room.
Exactly.
The machinery would have been located here. We know that Nero spent many years in Greece, and that the Greeks used this type of machinery. Françoise and her team suppose that Nero, who was fascinated with Greek culture and technology, imported the system to Rome. This is a sort of precursor. There was not another before it and not another after it, so it's unique.
Yes, for a private residence, even if we're talking about Nero, there are no other examples after him. No one was crazy enough to reproduce this kind of madness.
Thanks to the team's work, little by little Nero's folly is once again finding its shape. But the question remains, what did the upper area of the edifice look like? On the surface, nothing is left of the room where Nero's guests dined. To get an idea of what it may have looked like, Françoise asked for the help of a numismatist, who I'm going to meet. Fiorenzo Catali studied a very unique piece of money. It's called a dupodius, a brass coin that was highly used during Nero's reign and which holds an important clue.
This is a dupondius, minted during Nero's reign. On one side, we see his head, with all the imperial attributes. And on the other side, a complex architecture which represents a circular building with two adjoining wings. What's most interesting about this coin is the presence of a Mac Aug legend, which leaves the possibility of a double interpretation. The first, Masculum Augusti, may be referring to the emperor's market, a public building built for the people. This could also be Augusti Machina, the machine of the emperor, so maybe the rotating dining room Nero had built in his palace.
So this gives us an idea of what the rooms that disappeared may have looked like.
Yes, it's possible that it is the representation, even if in the currencies of previous emperors, one sees only public buildings represented, not private constructions. But that doesn't mean anything, because you have to take into account Nero's incredible personality. The currency was property of the emperor, so he could absolutely have decided to represent his own palace on the currency. It must be understood that Nero was not a man like everyone else. He was almost a god.
Inspired by this architectural image, the archaeologists formulated a hypothesis to reconstitute the upper portion of the rotating dining room. Future excavations may help the archaeologists understand where in the Golden House the dining room was situated. How did people enter? Where were the kitchens? So many questions that remain unanswered. The spot we're standing on now more or less gives us an idea of the panorama they looked out on. And it's exceptional, it could have sufficed. So why make the dining room rotate? And above all, 24 hours a day?
It was common practice to show off marvels and machines during banquets. And Nero went beyond that. He not only offered his guests small amusements, he also created a structure that revolved. During antiquity, they believed that it was not the earth that revolved, but the stars. They were convinced that the earth was stationary. So if you turn, you belong to the world of the stars. And so the people who participated in these banquets were placed on the level of stars, and therefore the gods.
And of course, at the center of the gods was Nero. One senses a bit of megalomania on his part.
Absolutely. Megalomaniac, certainly, but also a passion for knowledge, for science.
And passion is necessary to make a discovery of this order from ancient times. Is this the discovery of a lifetime?
Yes, absolutely. This is a great, unexpected opportunity. It's an extraordinary discovery, exciting and moving. A most happy discovery and a crowning achievement.
To make a discovery like this one, it's the dream of all archaeologists. Absolutely, myself included. This unique emotion that Françoise shared with me is always extraordinary.